All right, picture this. You're 400 feet below the surface of the ocean, sealed inside a massive steel tube with 134 other people. There are no windows, no sunlight, no fresh air, and absolutely no way out for the next 6 months. You eat, sleep, and work in the same metal halls every single day, and every breath you take is recycled air. The only person with their own private space? The captain. But don't let that fool you. There's nothing luxurious about life at the top in this world. When most people think of a submarine captain, they picture some kind of privilege, a private room, maybe even a better bed or a hot shower. But in reality, their quarters are barely larger than a closet. And yet, they carry the full weight of command, responsible not just for the safety and mental well-being of their crew, but also for a vessel that costs billions of dollars and carries the kind of classified tech and weapons most of us couldn't begin to understand. These captains lead crews on missions so secret, some details won't be declassified for decades, and they do it all in complete isolation from the outside world. Today, we're going to explore what their life is really like. From their tight living quarters that double as command centers, to the nuclear reactors they sleep beside, to the sacrifices they make in silence, this is the real story of America's submarine captains. Let's start with where the captain actually lives. If you're picturing a cozy suite or a private office, think again. On a Virginia-class submarine, the captain's stateroom is technically the biggest on board, but it's only about the size of a walk-in closet. It includes a fold-down bunk that rests above a small table, a cramped desk in the corner, and a couple of drawers to hold uniforms and personal items. That's about it. There's no extra space, no comfort features, and definitely no decor. But what makes it special isn't luxury, it's privacy. It's the only room on the entire submarine where one person doesn't have to share a bed. While the rest of the crew rotates in and out of bunks using a system called hot racking, where one sailor gets in bed just as another gets out, the captain's bunk is always available. It's not a privilege so much as a necessity. The captain must be alert and ready to respond at all times, day or night. And that means having a space to rest or to think without interruption. That small room also comes with its own tiny bathroom, or head in Navy terms, including a toilet, a sink, and a narrow shower stall. Again, this might sound basic, but when over 100 other people are sharing just a handful of bathrooms across the sub, having a private one makes all the difference. Still, the captain's quarters aren't just for sleeping and hygiene. They serve as a war room, a counseling office, and sometimes a sanctuary for sailors struggling with deployment stress. In the end, that cramped space carries the same emotional weight as it does operational responsibility. Right next to that small room is something with far more power than any bedroom deserves: a nuclear reactor. On a Virginia-class submarine, roughly 1/3 of the vessel's internal structure is taken up by the nuclear propulsion system. That reactor, fueled by enriched uranium, provides enough energy to keep the sub submerged and fully operational for decades without ever needing a refuel. It's one of the reasons American submarines are able to disappear beneath the waves for months at a time, completely undetectable. What's remarkable is how normal it becomes for those on board. Steve Weiner, a former officer on the USS Connecticut, described how day-to-day life eventually dulls the awareness of being near one of the most powerful man-made energy sources in existence. Still, it's something to reflect on. Submarine captains eat, sleep, and work just a few feet from a nuclear engine that powers a 800-ton vessel, supports life systems, drives the propellers, and could, if things ever went catastrophically wrong, turn the entire boat into a danger zone. The next generation of submarines, like the Columbia class, will take this even further. These vessels will come equipped with nuclear cores designed to last the entire 40-year life of the submarine. That means from the moment it's commissioned to the day it's retired, it will never once need to be opened for refueling. The captain who commands it will spend their entire career living alongside a nuclear powerhouse and doing so as if it were routine. Living on a submarine isn't just about tight quarters or nuclear engines. It's about completely rearranging your understanding of time, space, and privacy. Instead of a normal 24-hour day, submariners operate on an 18-hour cycle. The crew is split into 3 sections that rotate through 6-hour shifts. So while one group is working, another is trying to relax or eat, and the third is trying to sleep, all while packed into a steel cylinder deep beneath the ocean. There's no sunrise to wake you, no sunset to wind down your day, and no weekends to look forward to. After a while, time just becomes a blur. The captain isn't exempt from this chaos. In fact, they don't really get to follow a shift schedule at all. They need to be available at all times, ready to make snap decisions, lead during emergencies, and maintain awareness of everything happening on board. Their sleep schedule is dictated not by routine, but by circumstance. If a system fails at 3 a.m., or if the sonar picks up an unidentified contact, the captain is instantly on duty, no matter how long it's been since they last closed their eyes. Food plays an unexpectedly important role in all of this. Meals help mark the passage of time and give the crew something to look forward to. The galley staff rotates meals to keep variety going for each shift, so the guys working midnight won't be stuck eating scrambled eggs every morning for months straight. And like everything else on board, even the officer's dining space pulls double duty. In the event of a medical emergency, it's cleared off and converted into an operating room, where life-saving procedures take place right next to where people normally eat dinner. The environment is always tight, always noisy, and always shared. There's no such thing as being alone, and that includes the captain. Even with a private room, they're constantly on call. Sailors knock on the door at all hours for guidance, discipline, or support. It's not just about leading missions, it's about holding the emotional weight of the crew. Now let's zoom out and look at the submarines themselves, because they've come a long way from the old diesel boats of the past. Today's Virginia-class submarines are some of the most advanced military vehicles in the world. These nuclear-powered attack submarines are fast, stealthy, and incredibly versatile. They can run intelligence-gathering missions, deploy special forces, track enemy vessels, and strike targets with precision cruise missiles, all without ever surfacing. Each submarine costs between $2.8 and $3.2 billion to build, depending on the model. The Navy already has over 20 of them in service and plans to operate more than 60 by the 2040s. The newest versions, called Block 5, include a special section called the Virginia Payload Module. This adds 4 vertical launch systems that each hold 7 Tomahawk missiles, dramatically increasing the submarine's firepower. These are not just war machines, they're floating cities. The captain commands more than just weapons. They oversee logistics, morale, maintenance, and mission execution, all while living underwater with no access to the outside world. Every inch of space on board is accounted for. The torpedo room might be filled with weapons during deployment, but it also gets converted into an exercise room or temporary sleeping quarters when needed. The one washer and dryer on board serve the entire crew, so clean clothes become a prized commodity. Captains are responsible for managing all of this. They make sure the crew gets the rest, nutrition, and movement they need to stay functional even when movement is restricted to silent, low-impact workouts like stretching and yoga. Treadmills are shut off during stealth operations because even the sound of footsteps can be picked up by enemy sonar. Every routine must be balanced with the constant risk of detection. What makes these submarines so formidable isn't just their size or their weapons, it's the technology packed inside every inch of their hull. Submarine captains today operate some of the most advanced systems ever put into a warship, and they're trained to understand and command it all. The Virginia-class submarines use fly-by-wire controls, a digital system that replaces traditional hydraulics, making them surprisingly agile even in tight, shallow waters. That means they're not just deadly out in the deep ocean. They can maneuver close to coastlines with shocking precision, slipping into places older boats couldn't even approach safely. One of the biggest upgrades is in sonar, the ears of a submarine. Instead of the classic spherical arrays used for decades, Virginia-class subs are equipped with a large aperture bow sonar, shaped like a horseshoe and embedded right into the hull. This system allows the captain to track dozens of objects at once, above and below the waterline, from enemy vessels to terrain features to schools of fish. It's what makes modern submarines so hard to detect and so good at detecting others. Then there's firepower. With the Virginia Payload Module installed, these submarines can carry up to 65 Tomahawk cruise missiles. Each of those missiles costs around $1.4 million, which means the captain is commanding not just a billion-dollar submarine, but potentially hundreds of millions in ordnance. And it's not just about launching weapons, it's about doing so silently, secretly, and with absolute precision. Every decision has weight, and every launch must be approved by someone who understands the mission, the politics, the risks, and the consequences. That someone is the captain. Technology doesn't make decisions on its own. It doesn't weigh options, feel the pressure, or carry the responsibility. That's why captains spend years mastering these systems, because in the end, it's not just about knowing how things work. It's about knowing what to do when things don't. The submarines of today are already impressive, but what's coming next will completely change the game. The Columbia-class submarines are the future of the Navy's undersea force, and they're designed to be bigger, quieter, more survivable, and more powerful than anything that's ever gone underwater before. At 560 feet long and 43 feet wide, these boats will be the largest submarines ever built by the United States. They're intended to replace the aging Ohio-class ballistic missile subs and take on the most critical nuclear deterrence missions for decades to come. The lead ship, the USS District of Columbia, began construction in 2020 and is scheduled to enter service in the early 2030s, though, like most massive defense projects, there have been some delays. Each Columbia-class sub will carry 16 Trident II ballistic missiles, each capable of holding multiple nuclear warheads. These aren't just long-range weapons, they're strategic game-changers, intercontinental, second-strike capabilities that can survive a first attack and retaliate from beneath the waves. Each submarine is projected to cost over $6 billion, with a total program lifecycle of more than $340 billion. That means the captains who will eventually command these boats won't just be leading missions. They'll be responsible for some of the most expensive and destructive military assets in human history. And they'll do it in total silence, deep underwater, with no headlines, no fanfare, and almost no contact with the outside world. What's really wild is that the junior officers currently serving on today's Virginia-class subs are the ones who will become the Columbia-class captains of tomorrow. They're learning now, operating systems that prepare them for even more complex responsibilities down the line. And with every mission, every rotation, every decision they make today, they're training for a future that's faster, deeper, and more dangerous. For all the tech and strategy, submarine command is still a human job, and the personal cost is something few people ever see. Submarine captains spend months at a time underwater, completely cut off from the world. When the boat is submerged, which it usually is, there's almost no communication with families, friends, or even higher-ups at command. Messages are text-only, often delayed, and have to be transmitted during rare windows when the sub briefly comes near the surface. Some captains go weeks without sending or receiving a single message. Former officers describe the emotional toll as heavy, even haunting. Steve Weiner, who spent 2 months under the polar ice on the USS Connecticut, said the isolation changed him permanently. It was, in his words, a watered-down version of a monk's retreat, but with the added weight of nuclear responsibility. There are no holidays on a sub. No birthdays, no anniversaries, no graduations. Children are born while you're under the sea. Loved ones get sick or pass away, and you find out long after the fact. You miss everything, and all you can do is keep the mission running. And yet, captains have to carry that emotional burden while staying steady, composed, and decisive. Their mental health matters, but it often comes second to the needs of the crew. If a sailor is breaking down, the captain becomes counselor. If morale is slipping, they become a motivator. If the mission goes sideways, they become the rock everyone leans on. And they do it all without ever showing cracks in the armor because in a place with no escape, fear is contagious. There's no room for selfishness, and very little space for grief. These leaders volunteer for the most demanding, most invisible, and most critical job in the Navy, and they do it knowing that their sacrifices won't be seen by anyone except the crew they lead. While most people picture submarines as platforms for launching torpedoes or cruise missiles, there's a whole other side to modern undersea warfare that's far more covert special operations. Some submarines are specifically modified to support elite military units like Navy SEALs and Marine Raiders, and the captains who lead those missions have to juggle even more complex layers of responsibility. The 4 Ohio-class submarines converted to SSGNs, the USS Ohio, USS Michigan, USS Florida, and USS Georgia, were repurposed specifically for this dual role. Not only do they carry up to 154 Tomahawk missiles each, but they can also deploy up to 66 Special Forces operators at a time, making them floating bases for secret missions all over the globe. These submarines are outfitted with dry deck shelters, which are basically lockout chambers that allow divers and gear to exit the submarine while it's still submerged. Special Forces teams can sneak out undetected, complete their mission, and re-enter the sub all without ever surfacing. That means the captain isn't just managing the sub's stealth and navigation, but coordinating live operations on foreign shores. They're in charge of timing, positioning, and keeping everything quiet, secure, and in sync even when comms are limited and the risks are sky high. Captains who command SSGNs have to balance traditional submarine warfare with the unpredictable nature of special ops. Missions change quickly, objectives are sensitive, failures can be catastrophic, and the entire time, the boat must remain invisible. There's no margin for error, and the stakes go far beyond just sinking ships or collecting intel. These captains become the unsung coordinators of the most daring, high-stakes missions the U.S. military undertakes, and they do it all with no spotlight, no headlines, and no safety net. Becoming a submarine captain isn't just a job title you earn with time. It's the result of one of the most demanding career paths in the military, a journey that spans more than a decade of relentless testing, qualification, and frontline experience. It all begins with earning your dolphins, the small gold insignia worn proudly on the chest, marking you as someone fully qualified in submarine warfare. But this symbol isn't handed out lightly. It requires months of exhaustive study, practical examinations, and supervised walkthroughs of every single system aboard the submarine. Officers are expected to understand how everything works not just in theory, but in real time, under pressure, and in environments where mistakes aren't an option. From nuclear propulsion to sonar interpretation to emergency protocols involving fire, flooding, or reactor shutdowns, there is no room for partial knowledge. You don't get to be an expert in one field and ignore the rest. On a submarine, you're expected to know everything, Because when you're sealed underwater with limited communication and 130 lives in your care, someone has to. But earning your dolphins is just the beginning. For those with their sights set on command, the path becomes even more intense. Future captains go through nuclear power school, where they're trained in the science and control of nuclear reactors, followed by the Naval Submarine School, where they learn tactical systems, weapons employment, and the fundamentals of leading a crew in the most confined and unforgiving environments on Earth. After that, it's years of real-world deployment, first as a junior officer, then as a department head, and eventually as an executive officer, the second in command of a submarine. Each of these stages includes constant scrutiny, performance reviews, and psychological assessments, not to mention hands-on leadership during real missions. They're judged not only on technical skill, but on their judgment, composure, and the way they handle stress that doesn't go away, even when the shift ends. And then, once selected for command, the challenge only intensifies. Captains continue their education throughout their careers. They attend war games, simulate battle conditions in advanced tactical trainers, and participate in classified briefings that require a deep understanding of global strategy, adversary capabilities, and fast-evolving threats. Submarine technology doesn't sit still. It's constantly upgraded, redesigned, and adapted. That means captains must remain students, always learning, always staying sharp, because the boat they command today may operate very differently than the one they trained on just 5 years ago. The systems are more complex. The stakes are higher. The responsibility is heavier. What separates submarine captains from most other leaders is the isolation factor. They don't just command from a position of power, they command in near total separation from oversight. For weeks or months at a time, they operate without direction from above. There are no second opinions, no committee votes, and no lifelines. A decision made in the control room at midnight might never be reviewed until months after the mission ends. That's why the level of accountability is so staggering. One bad decision, even one small oversight, can compromise the safety of the entire crew or jeopardize national security. And that's why, in this role, competence isn't just expected. It's required. Always. Without exception. Submarine captains may live and work in silence, but they play one of the loudest roles in American national defense. The boats they command represent the sea-based leg of the nuclear triad, a three-pronged strategy that includes land-based missiles, strategic bombers, and nuclear submarines. Of the three, submarines are by far the most survivable. They can hide for months at a time, deep below the ocean's surface, completely undetectable by enemies. That makes them the ultimate second-strike deterrent, a guaranteed response if the United States were ever attacked. Roughly half of America's active strategic nuclear warheads are carried aboard submarines, and the responsibility of managing them falls directly into the hands of captains. These are not theoretical weapons. They are live, armed, and ready to launch if ever ordered, and yet they're never used hastily. The entire point of submarine deterrence is restraint. Submarine captains are trained to act with patience, wisdom, and an unwavering chain of command. Their job is to be invisible until they absolutely cannot be. During the Cold War, submarine captains played an essential role in tracking Soviet fleets and deterring attacks. Today, they still operate in contested waters across the globe, from the Arctic to the South China Sea. They gather intelligence, project strength, and conduct operations that very few people will ever know about. Their missions are so sensitive that some reports will remain classified for the next 50 years. And under the AUKUS partnership, a security pact between Australia, the United Kingdom, and the United States, American submarine captains will soon be training Australian officers to command Virginia-class submarines, marking a historic transfer of knowledge and trust between allies. The strategic importance of submarine captains isn't just about firepower. It's about the psychological weight they carry, the knowledge that if all else fails, they're the final layer of defense, sitting silently in the depths with a finger on history's most dangerous trigger. As technology pushes forward, the role of the submarine captain is evolving too. The upcoming SSN-X program, scheduled for development in the 2030s, promises to deliver submarines that are even faster, stealthier, and more automated than anything currently in the fleet. These next-generation boats will incorporate permanent magnet motors, high-temperature superconducting systems, and possibly shaftless drive designs with electric motors mounted outside the pressure hull. That means quieter movement, less maintenance, and an even greater ability to operate in contested environments. But with more automation comes a new kind of challenge. Future submarine captains won't just be managing crew and missions, they'll be overseeing increasingly complex software systems, data integration platforms, and AI-assisted decision tools. The margin for human error may shrink, but the need for sharp human judgment will only grow. These captains will still be the ones making the calls, interpreting the signals, and bearing the burden of life and death responsibility when the computers can't. And as geopolitics change, so do the missions. The rise of peer competitors like China and the expansion of underwater drone technology means that submarine captains of the future won't just be navigating open ocean, they'll be operating in heavily monitored, high-risk zones where even a small misstep could trigger global consequences. The future submarine force will demand leaders who are as adaptable as they are experienced, as calm under pressure as they are technically sharp. The men and women currently serving as junior officers, the ones cleaning sonar arrays and standing watch in the control room, will be the next generation of submarine captains. They're learning from today's leaders, absorbing lessons not found in textbooks, and preparing for a world where deep-sea decisions may carry even higher stakes than they do now. So now you've seen it, the real world of a U.S. submarine captain. It's not a job filled with glory, glamour, or recognition. It's a life defined by relentless pressure, quiet courage, and an unshakable sense of duty. These leaders operate in the shadows, living day after day in spaces smaller than a college dorm, resting mere feet from nuclear reactors that hum with the power to change history. They make decisions that carry global weight, and they do it without fanfare, without applause, and often without anyone on the outside ever knowing they were there. They command vessels worth billions, packed with the most advanced technology and weaponry ever built. They lead crews through endless corridors of steel, navigating pitch-black waters on missions that may never be publicly acknowledged. They're responsible for the safety, discipline, and mental well-being of over 100 people, all while carrying the burden of total accountability. And they do it with a calm, focused presence that never demands attention, because real leadership doesn't perform, it endures. These men and women aren't just skilled operators or military officers. They are the silent guardians of a world. Most of us will never witness a world where strength is measured not in volume, but in restraint, where authority comes not from orders shouted, but from judgment earned, and where power is hidden deliberately behind silence, patience, and precision. Every submarine captain carries the weight of the unthinkable, and yet they choose service anyway, not for fame or status, but for the quiet, steady purpose of keeping peace in a world that too often forgets what peace costs. So the next time you think about America's military might, don't stop at the surface. Don't just picture the fighter jets screaming overhead or the massive aircraft carriers casting shadows across the sea. Think of what lies beneath the submarines that cruise silently through the deep, unseen and unheard, but always present. Think of the captains who go months without sunlight, who miss birthdays and funerals and first steps, who lead in silence so the rest of us can live in safety. And remember that sometimes, the strongest leaders are the ones you never see, holding the line in the darkest, deepest places on Earth, because they believe it's worth